All right. Well, welcome everyone. I hope you got to see a little bit of the eclipse today. And if not, you can definitely enjoy the pictures that are being posted online. And I'm sure the news will probably have lots of lots of follow-up. So, we are going to go about this drawing just like we do any other piece of art. We're going to be making sure that we're drawing lightly and um, creating the basic shapes first. I'm just trying to get the light right. There we are. Felt like there was a little too much light on it. So as you can see, it is the full piece of our paper here. I'm going to just hold this up in case anyone wants to take a picture of it before we start. Um, and if not, it will be off here to the side. So we're going to start first with our boot. So we're going to make sure to leave room at the top for our beautiful tulips. So basically, it's about halfway down our 8.5 by 11 paper. And I apologize that I forgot to say that it's 8.5 by 11 paper. And this is, I'm just using printer paper. That's actually what I did the project on. So you don't really need special paper for this project. All right, so we're moving halfway down. I'm gonna go a little bit closer so you can start to see the detail as I draw it. And we're gonna start with the inside of the boot. So again, we're doing everything using our basic shapes. So which means we're going to be doing the pretty much a silhouette of our boot, except for the inside. So here we are, we're going to start a little bit with the inside, and it's a little bit of a curve that's happening. So like this, sort of like a slanted curve for the inside. And we're going to imagine that this is going to be the inside. So we're going to make a cylinder just like that. Can everybody see that? Is that too light? You can see it. You can just give me a, okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay, great. So from that, we're now going to make this is the inside. So now we're going to make a bit of the cuff at the top of our boot. And then we're going to start to create the shape of the boot. And so on the left side here, this is going towards the heel. And because our boot is set back a little bit in the way that it's angled, this part, the heel, is going to be a bit higher up than the front of our boot, which is kind of strange, right? Or it seems kind of strange. Make sure. Okay. All right. So we're going to go start here. And I think I want to make mine just a little bit longer here. And we're going to have room to adjust. So if you don't feel like your line is too long, or you feel like it needs to be longer, we're going to have time to adjust. So after that, we're going to stop right here. That is, again, the back of the boot. We're going to come right back up here because we're going to draw the area where the tongue is. We want to make sure to get all of those shapes in first. So actually to the left of the tongue. So first, we're going to draw this part here. And so it's going to go down and slightly curve a little bit, like so. Now, once we do that, we're also going to draw the wrinkle of the boot so that we can get an idea of about where we're going to start the descent of the front of the boot. After we draw that wrinkle, we're going to go back up and we're going to draw sort of what looks like a bit of a rectangle. And for right now, this will do fine because we're really looking at this shape right here. So what we just did was we sort of just drew this shape. And then right over here, we're going to draw a bit of the tongue, or actually the flap of the tongue. So remember, we draw lightly so that we can erase. So we're going to come back up here and we're going to draw the bottom part right here of the top flap. And once you do that, you can then erase the line that you drew for the inside of the boot. So I'll say that again in case you're a little confused. We had the inside of the boot right over here, the cylinder. And because we're drawing the top of the flap and it goes upward, we've erased the one section of the inside of the boot. So now we're going to come over here and we're just going to make this look three-dimensional. And so we're going to come here over to the left. This is the flap, and this is the one side of the flap. So it's going to kind of look like a rectangle. And I'm going to draw this a little bit darker so you can see. And then it's going to go across. And it's going to be a slanted line over here. And then another rectangle. And we're gonna fuss with this a bit later on because this line should be a little more curved, but we just want to kind of get the shape in right now. We're getting basic shapes in so that we know where to put everything. All right, so now that we have those sections in, we can now go back on the left side here, and we're going to see about creating the boot down here, the rest of the boot. So here is our line, our wrinkle, right, for our boot. And then we're going to come over here, and this may have to come down just a little bit because the wrinkle is right here. And if we kind of look and see, this is how we can see where our edge of the boot needs to be. Our edge of the boot is almost in line with the wrinkle here. So if your bottom of the boot is like up here or a little bit lower down, you may have to just move it and just take a look to see where your wrinkle is. Now that's just one indication. We may still need to, move some things around, but this is helpful for you. So now we're going to start and create the shape of the boot. So we're going to come over here and we're going to look at this. We're going to create the inside area and not the bottom part yet. So we're going to start to curve a little bit. And then we curve a little bit inward and back out, just very slightly. And then our boot is going to curve to the right. And it's going to seem a little strange to do that, but it's the angle. So we're going to curve a little to the right. And then this is the tip of the boot, and it's going to straighten out a little bit and also get a little bit round before it comes on back. So if you kind of think of it almost like a booty, if you have to create the shape of a booty first and then create some more sort of sharpened lines, you can do that. And I like to come right up where the bottom of the tongue is here. So I'm looking at mine and thinking this may be a little too wide, or I have to make this part a little wider. And then we're going to also change the shape a little bit down here and over here because we have a bump that's going to happen in this area. So what I mean by that is here's the top of the boot. Here is the toe part, and it starts to go back a little bit, but then there's a bump. And I'm going to make that a little darker so you can see. And then it goes back and then across again. So as you can see, I need to erase this line. And you may have to do the same. And then I'm probably going to make this a little bit wider. And also at the same time, make this just a little bit thinner. So I'm going to move this again to kind of go a little bit inward. Now, again, this all depends on what yours looks like. You have to see if it looks right. But this is where your adjustment would probably happen. See, and now that's looking much more like a boot. And then we're going to come over here. We're now going to fuss with this area and this area, because as you can see, this now needs to be a bit longer. So we're also going to come up here and lightly erase the top because now we want to make this bend a little bit. Remember how I mentioned that this area needs to kind of bend inward. So, and now mine needs to sort of be a little longer. We're going to put a bend in this almost like it's a smile. And then we're going to do the same at the bottom here. And then we recreate that shape to look like this. So I just made this a bit longer so that it will fit the part of the tongue area. It's going to kind of look like that. Oh, let me move my camera up a bit so you can see the whole thing. So this is where you might need to be kind of fussing around a little bit with the shape so that you make sure you have this bump here. And then this part. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the other section of the shoe that's open. This is so basically what we have is, in the middle are the strings that, tie the two parts of the shoe together, right? The shoe strings. And so we also have this other part here where the laces are also coming in. So we start up here where the tongue is, or the top of that tongue. And then we go down along the side of the boot just a little bit, like so. So it's going to kind of look like that shape. And that's going to make it look more three-dimensional. And then we're going to finally come down to the bottom of the shoe to create the rest of it. So we're going to start back here on the heel. And I know there's a lot going on here, right? We've got, we've got the rest of the boot happening here with all of that. We're just going to ignore that for now. Again, making sure you're drawing lightly. And we're now going to draw the bottom rubber part of our shoe, right? So we're going to come outward and back inward towards this curved area. and we're going to come out again. So basically, we are sort of following the shape of our shoe. Now, this is just without the treads. We haven't drawn the treads yet. So keep going until you get to this part, and then we connect it like so. And I just have to fix this one part here to make it a little bit flatter in front. There we go. All right. And now we're going to go back and create the tread area under this section. So we're going to start here where it's sort of turning, and we're going to create some bumpy areas for that tread. So we've got one area there that starts to get a little bit bigger, and then there's a flat part, and then it's sort of a continuous line of bumpiness as we go around. And then it gets a little bit thinner until we get to the edge here where it curves to meet up with the top part of the shoe. Let me move this up a bit. There we go. All right, so we have our basic shape now of our shoe. And now we're going to start with adding more of the details before we move upward. So what that means is we're going to come over here back to the left, and we're going to start adding some of these wrinkles. We've got 2 bumps with wrinkles, and that's going to help make our shoe look even more realistic. So first we're going to come up here, and I asked you to draw this portion of, the bumping out of the shoe. So this may have to be a little bit smaller or taller, thicker, this section here, where I asked you to kind of make the top of the shoe. So mine has to be a little bit thicker. So I'm erasing this line here. And the reason I know that is because we're going to come and take this line, and we're going to make it as, this is now part of the shoe a little more. So this is the part where we're going to start where the laces are. And so I'm going to make the inside of the shoe a little bit smaller. So I now just made that cylinder a little bit smaller. So I went up with this, then I went back here and made this area a little smaller. And I'm going to do the same with the bump here because it's going out a little bit more to the left, and I want it to be a little bit closer to the shoe so it looks more realistic. So I just erased that to make it a little bit smaller, and then it'll go back in towards the shoe. And then we're going to start to add 2 bumps down here, bumps, wrinkles, so that it's going to look more like a used boot, right? So we're going to come over here, and we're going to lightly add a bit of a bump, like so. And we're going to add, a bit of a wrinkle that goes down a little bit. And we're going to add another one that's a little bit smaller. Same idea, right? So we just want it to look a little more used. And then Over here, we're going to go in a little bit with our line because that would also make it look used and bent, right? Our heel would sort of do that. And so now with those, just those two additions, it already looks a little more realistic. So next, we're going to come over here and start to create the um the openings for the laces. So first, we're going to create the side area. So this here, the detail. So we're going to start up a little bit towards where our flowers are going to be. And we're going to create this area right here. So you see me kind of tracing it. We're not doing anything with the laces yet. Those will be added. But for now, as we always do, we create the shape of what's underneath, and then we add on, like we're creating layers, like an onion, right? You know, if you were to peel back the layers of an onion and then put it together, it would form the onion. But this is one of our layers. So over here, we're going to go up a little bit with the line, and we're going to come down. It's going to be a little bit bumpy and go out because this is the lining of our part where the where the laces are going to go. So this part you would imagine would be a little bit bent and used. That's kind of what I was thinking when I was drawing it. So I thought of this being like an old smelly boot, like a farmhouse boot, you know? So that's kind of why I'm making it a little bit more used looking. And so now we can come and create the top of it again. And so now this part is sticking up a little bit. This section's sticking up a little bit now. And then we're going to start with our cylinders for the openings of our laces. So we're going to start up here. And basically we're going to start, I'm going to go in a little bit closer now that we have a lot of the detail so you can see. And I'm going to just flash back on the original here. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about now creating the holes for these. And so we're going to start off with the actual holes surrounding. So for instance, this shape would be more of a, it's still a cylinder, but it's an oval. This one's a little rounder, and they get a little rounder and then it's smaller, a small kind of circle. And we can do half circles for now. This one, we're going to do a full circle. And actually, let's do full circles, but very lightly. So sorry, I changed my mind on that. Let's do full circles, but very lightly. So we're going to start to do that. So starting up at the top here, we're going to start with our small sort of oval. We're going to skip space. And we're going to start with kind of a circle. And I may make this a little thicker so that I have more room for these. Here's another one. And I think this one we can do sort of a half circle. And then we've got our final one that is smaller, like so. And in the meantime, I'm going to make this a little thicker, and you are welcome to join me in doing so, like so. So what I did was I just erased a little down the left side so that I could make this thicker because it's not as thick as the one of my original. See, and that looks a little more like a used boot. And then we're going to kind of create some light creases with our pencil, just kind of following the left side here. And as you can see, I don't make a continuous line. I break up the line. And then we're going to start with our first lace. And that's going to be in this hole. So we're going to go on the inside here, and we're going to create a small, kind of like a half circle, almost like we're creating a little rainbow. I'm going to go really close because there we go. I want to really get in on this detail here. So here is what I made, right? A little bit of a half circle here. And then we're going to create the lace coming down over everything. So here is the first side. It's going down on the boot. It turns. And for now, we're going to make the other side of it so that you don't get too confused. So here we are making the other side. And that's going to stop about right here. And then you can erase inside it because your lace is now in front. So that's only part of the top lace. And we started to make the line for the bottom section. And now you can make that kind of curl around by adding the other section here like so. Also erasing inside. You may have to adjust your string a little bit. Right? And our lace is kind of curling around. It hits the ground. And now here's the other part that is on the ground. We're making it twist and turn. Here's the one section, and then it's flipped over. And then we have the little plastic thing at the top, which I don't know the name of. And you have yourself a lace. And then we're going to come back here and work on more detail. So now that that first lace is drawn, we want to create the rest of the shape for the part that it's coming out of, right? So we're going to go like this, and now all of a sudden you have a three-dimensional piece that's happening. It now looks like your lace is coming out of that little round circular part that they put on shoes. I should probably look up these names of things. There's probably an interesting little name for those. And now we're going to start to create the laces in the middle. So we're going to do the same thing that we did here, except it's a little tighter, and our laces are going to go from here to the other side. So for instance, we have one more thing to draw before we start those laces. This section here is another part. Oh, aglet, that is cool. Thanks, Rebecca. Aglet. I got to write that down because And an eyelet, that makes sense. I have heard of that before. That is cool. Aglet and eyelet. Hmm. Thank you. That is really cool. I love that. So we're going to make a little section here that is a bit three-dimensional. So we added this bump, right? Well, we're going to make it three-dimensional by creating it looking like this. So what I did was I went here, extended the bump, the line right here. Adding a small curved shape because to make this three-dimensional, we go like this. So we're kind of making it look very similar to the top of the sort of tongue area here. And you're left with this kind of sticking out. We want to get that in before we start to add our laces. And so now we're going to start with our laces. And we're going to start at the top. So we're going to come right over here to, so I guess this would be called the eyelet. Or is this part the eyelet? Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to start here. Thanks, Rebecca. So cool. So we're going to come in this section and we're going to make another half circle because that is where our lace is coming out of. And then you're going to make your lace like this. And so you're probably wondering, well, how do I make it underneath everything? You're going to halfway stop there. And again, remember to be using light strokes because you may have to, do some finagling and erase. So for instance, this lace actually comes down a little bit and there's another part of it over here. And so if you want, you can sort of make this kind of half circle and fill it in dark because it is basically the middle of part of that lace. And with that, we're going to come over here and make the next lace by creating a line and then making this lace go across the shoe. You can bend it a bit, and this lace is going to go underneath and not in an eyelet. So here is the next one. So this is where the lace starts, right? The other laces start over on this side, and then some of them over here come out of an eyelet or get tucked into this area. But so far, so we have two laces here. Now we're going to make another lace that is going to be on top and coming from this area. So we repeat the pattern again with creating a half circle, right? This one's going to come out from here, and this one's going to go on top of the one that we just created. And it's going to go over a bit on the other. And then we're going to make it three-dimensional by making the other side of it. So basically we draw it first, and then we erase the lines that we don't need anymore, but we're able to see how it's falling on top of, the sections. And all of a sudden you have three dimensions, a three-dimensionality happening is what I was trying to say. And then you're going to erase some of these little lines back where it starts. And then remember to adjust the eyelet so that it now looks like it's three-dimensional. So I'm doing that now to this one and this one. So I'm just pointing to where I fixed this area. I added a little more underneath because it would be underneath. And same here, right? And then your lace, since it's coming out of it, would be sort of obstructing the rest of the eyelet so that only a portion of the eyelet is showing underneath here. And that's what makes it look three-dimensional. And now we're going to start, or I'm sorry, we're going to now go to this one here, this small one. We're going to do the same thing, make a little half circle. And then this lace is going to go underneath the one that we just drew. You might have to do some adjusting here. And that one is going to go on the other side. And you'll have to do some erasing on the other side to make it look like it is kind of hanging over a little bit and bending. And then we have one final lace to add. I'm gonna make my lace a little bit thicker here. And you can adjust it to how it looks best. You know, you might want to kind of make a little bit of a wiggly line for the lace, right? As it's sort of bending with the shoe. And we have one more lace that's actually on this side. So where I'm pointing, and it's inside that area, it's going to go up and over the other one. So you'll have to erase a little bit of the other one. Now, if yours don't fit exactly like mine do, that's okay. Don't stress too much about it. Oops, I just erased the wrong lace. Here we go. That has to go over this one. There we go. Okay. And so now we have our laces, and we have one lace that is peeking out from the other side. Let me move my camera a little bit so you can see that part. So what I mean here is we have a lace that is just kind of peeking out from underneath. And there we've got our little plastic part. I think that's the aglet. Thank you. I'm like, that's the aglet. There we go. So cool. Okay, so now we're going to start to make some more wrinkles. And for now, we're just going to create those with some light strokes. So we've got a wrinkle here and some here that are going to start to kind of curve around to create the shape of the foot, like as if a foot was filling out the boot. And the way we do that is we use curved lines on this side, because this is kind of where your foot would be. So you can even make a line, what I'm doing here, make sort of a curved line, and we're going to create sort of the top part of the shoe or boot like this. So you're going to go around and you're going to make a very light line like this. And that line is going to continue to the back part of your boot, and it should match up with the other wrinkle, which mine does not, so I have to fix that. So it's going to kind of swoop around and then match up with your smaller wrinkle. I have to make the bump a little bit bigger in order to do that. I'm going to make this one a little bigger too. So this is where we kind of readjust some things. I just made these two bumps a little bit bigger because there's going to be shading that's going to happen. And we're also going to add a bit of a line here that's going to start our shading. Let me move my camera up so you can see what I'm talking about here with the other boot. So the part that I'm talking about here is this area of shading that's going to happen, right? And all this. So we just started to create some lines for that area. So this is where, you kind of look and see if anything has to be adjusted. And once you start doing the shading, you may have to change a little bit, but we're going to at least lay the groundwork for all of the wrinkles. And we started off here with the first wrinkle, well, these two, and then we're going to start adding another wrinkle here. So remember, this is the shaded part. This is going to be the shaded part. So we add wrinkle here and here. We're going to go to the other side and add some light wrinkles. Like so. And then we're going to start adding a little more detail to the bottom portion of the tread, or actually there's like a little tiny part that is sort of in between the tread area and this portion. So this little part right here, we're going to add that around there. So let's start that before we get into creating the our tulips, and then we start to shade everything. Okay, so here we are back down where our boot is, right? And we're going to add a little section here, a very thin area that we're going to make lines in. I'm going to go really close again. All right, so here's our line. We're going to follow around our boot again. You're going to get to the part that starts to kind of curve, and then it's going to disappear like so. That's because of the way the boot is. And then you're going to create very light lines for the detail. Going all across that area. Like so. We're also going to add to the back portion here of the heel. We're just going to add a light line here because that's a little detail. We're going to make this more shaded in a little bit. But now we're going to come up here to the top, and we're going to start to create our tulips and also maybe fix a little bit of this tongue area. I want to make mine a little bit taller. Mine is just kind of smaller at this point, and I think I instructed you all to do the same. So we're going to make this just a little bit taller. Just a little bit. And then remembering to kind of curve it again. So as it gets taller, it also has to get longer up here because of the angle. So for instance, I just curved that and now I have to make it a little longer on the right side. Yep, that looks better. It wasn't long enough. There we go. And now we're going to start with the leaves and the tulips. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to start shading, starting with the tulips and going downward. So we're going to use a lot of what's called, you may, if you've taken my classes before, which a lot of you have, it's called mark making. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Mark making is using strokes, whether it be with a pencil, whether it be, it's usually with a pencil or charcoal. And it's using those strokes to create shading, but sometimes we go in the opposite direction. Sometimes we go straight up and down. As you can see, for instance, here, there's a lot of mark making happening. We've got sort of some shaded strokes going up and down, but then we've got some cross hatching and some hatching happening. Hatching and cross hatching means when your lines are literally crossing over other lines to create shading, to create a piece or a section on something that is darker, right? So this is shading. And then we've literally just have the really dark stuff happening inside the flowers. So anyway, this is what we're going to be going for. We also have some mark making here, right? We've got some diagonal strokes happening along with strokes going up and down. And what this does is it is creating the texture for the leaf, right? If you look up close, especially at tulip leaves, they're kind of like very lined. And so I tried to kind of recreate that here and in some of these other areas. So anyway, that was just sort of a brief discussion about mark making. We'll be getting into that after we draw everything. So we're going to start off here on the left side, and we're going to be creating a long leaf, right? So we're going to start back here. We're going to leave a little room here because we've got some grass coming out. And if we want, let's kind of draw in that grass right now. And that is just using strokes like this with our pencil. So you can make them dark, you can make them light. I like to start off with making them light. And then from there, we're going to go up and start to create our large leaf, our first leaf here. And remember, we're going to be creating other leaves and all the flowers that are going in front. So you want to keep your lines light, but it's always easier to draw sort of where the shape is going. And then that way you draw it correctly and you can draw everything in front of it. And it doesn't seem so, I think it seems harder when you're trying to, draw dislocated shapes and trying to fit them in the right spots. So I tend to draw everything, for the most part, the full part of it to see where it ends up on the artwork. So here's our first leaf. And then we're going to come back down here and we're going to start to draw sort of another really thin leaf here. And we're drawing it right on top of the other one. And it's kind of coming from here. So once you draw it, you can then erase the lines from the first leaf. And now you have that section that's in front of it. And that's how we do this. We layer everything. There's also another leaf that is kind of coming over here and bending. So we're going to draw that too. And then again, erase lines in the middle of it so that now it's starting to, it's right in front of it. And we have another small curved leaf. So I know this is where it gets a little crazy. There's a lot going on here. And if it doesn't look exactly like mine, again, don't worry about it. And we're going to start with our tulips now. So we're going to start with our stem. Here's a stem of a tulip. And here's the other side of it. We're bending it a little bit. And then we've got the shape of our first tulip. Which this one needs to be down a little bit. So I've made it a little too tall. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. So the shape of our tulip is going to be like this. Right? So we look at that overall shape, and then we're going to make it look three-dimensional by adding a line here and here. And then making this puff out a bit at the bottom. And then erasing so that now it looks three-dimensional. And then we're going to add these parts in here. So it's more of a kind of oval. And then a frilly part. Another oval. With another kind of frilly part up here. And we can add another line here. So this is our first tulip. We only have 3. Let me move my camera over a little more. All right, so we're going to start now and add some more leaves. Here's another one back here. And then we have this real big one. So we add this part here. And we're going to come down here and add this one. And at this stage, we're also going to add our second tulip. That is the one that is kind of going outward, and it's going to bend to the right. So let me start to move this over so you can see that. So here we are. We're going to create the first part of the tulip. We're going to have it bend. Make it three-dimensional by adding a second part. I may have to make adjust my the tongue one more time. So this is where if it's not falling in the right part, you either move the tulip over or you can make the tongue part a little bit wider. So this is the stem of the tulip. And then we're going to do the same shape, except this one is going to be a little bit wider. and bigger. I'm going to make this darker so you can see it online. So with this, oops, we're going to bend. We're going to come to a bit of a circle area at the top and then go down. So I'm pointing where we just did. We're going to come over here and make the other circular part of that part of the tulip. But we're not going to complete the line. We're going to leave it like so. And then we're going to come over here and make it three-dimensional by making it pointed up and meeting up with the other circular area. So I'm pointing to where we're doing. And then we're going to make it three-dimensional by making the pointed areas of the other side of the tulip. And then we have our last tulip happening here. And that's going to be in between one of these. So we're going to start first and we're going to bend it toward the left. Make it a little wider here at the top. And then get a little thinner as it goes down towards the other leaf. Now we're going to come up and do the same shape that we've been doing, except this one is a little wider because this tulip is a little more open. So we have the top of the flower bending open, coming down to the bottom, creating sort of a petal shape in the middle. So it's going to look like that. And then we'll take care of the inside by again creating shapes like this. And we've got one more kind of curved part here. A little bit thicker though. There we go. And now we're going to add a few more leaves just here on the right side coming out. So again, depending on, like, for instance, I realized I made this part of my boot different from the sample. It's a little bit less wide than this part. So I can't fit everything in, but we're going to fit in more grass right here. And we're going to come back and make it a little, even darker. But basically now is sort of filling in some more leaves. We have one dark one back here. And we've got sort of like the tops of leaves that are happening, right? We've got like, here's a top that you can see. We have sort of another piece of grass right here in front. Two pieces that I've redrawn over the rest in order to make it look like it's in front of everything. Then went in and erased those sections. And now we're going to start with the final part of our piece, and we're going to start shading. And we're going to start making things darker, going in between dark, medium, and light. So we're going to start with this leaf, and we're going to get darker, outlining it and going in the middle. So here we are outlining that. And then shading wise, we're going to start shading with our pencil. You can see that what I've done here is I've shaded a little bit lighter here at the bottom, but then it's getting a little bit medium over here. And then as I get down to the bottom of the boot, the other thing that we want to start doing now is, remember this part of the boot? Let's fill some of that in so that it looks three-dimensional. So we're going to come down here and we're going to fill it in a bit dark. It's going to look like this, where it's going to be sort of a, this is the soil part. If you were, not the soil part, the inside part of the boot. And we'll be filling in more of that, but for now, we'll fill that part in. And then we've got some grass happening, right? So we're going to add some grass, both a mixture of light and dark kind of lines. You can fill in this part of the boot as well. And then you're going to start filling in the shading for the rest of this leaf. And this is the combination of kind of mark making that I was talking about, where up top started, adding some lines going this way. Down here, I started adding lines that are going up and down. So basically, we are now starting to really fill in the leaf areas and starting to outline all of our stems. This is where you can also add in some filler areas if you need it. If you feel like there is a part that needs something, you can add, this is kind of how I did this. I sort of just started adding darker areas and then maybe some grass or another leaf. And so right now we're working on all the stem areas. Now, when you get to the stem of each of the tulips, I've kind of created a little bit of shading, and then I leave a little bit of the white of the paper to make it look like the light is kind of shining on it. So I did that with this one. And then I'm just filling in the back here a leaf. And some of the leaves in the back would be darker because they're in the back. Now, if you want, you can create everything with some light shading at first, and then go back and sort of outline. As we kind of go around. So that's going to look like this. I'm now just kind of lightly shading in some of the other leaves along with, you know, except when we get to a stem, I do a difference of making some of it dark, leaving the white of the paper, and also varying my shading lines to going kind of sideways, like I just did with this one. So there's really no wrong way to do this bouquet. You know, we have the drawn parts in. It's now sort of making some outlining happen and some dark shading and sort of some light shading. And for now, you know, the darkest parts would be towards where everything's coming out of the boot. So you would add some, you know, darker shading there. Instead, sometimes I'm adding a few more leaves to fill it in, sometimes grass. And here's finally the last stem here. So I'm going to outline that of the tulip. Go back and make it a little darker right above where the stem meets the tulip. Now you're going to find, you know, your hand might be kind of smudging some of your shading a little bit. Mine's doing that for sure. But you can always clean it up afterward. You can also make different leaves than I've made. You know, with a lot of these things, I kind of make it up as I go. So I don't look at any reference. I kind of made up the leaves. So if you want to add some different kinds of leaves in here, feel free. And then obviously grass that you can get darker with. You know, we started off very light on the left side. I'm going to now get a little darker. And now start to really outline all of these leaf shapes, make them stand out a little more. And as far as the shading goes on the flowers, it's very similar in that we sort of outline them a little darker again. So I like to kind of, this is a very heavy-handed drawing, lots of outlining. And then when we shade, we can add some lighter areas. And then again, adding some darker areas, especially when it comes to the middle section of the tulips. And again, this is where the mark making, you can have fun with it. Kind of shading in different directions. Also making light shaded lines going in the opposite direction. There's the first one. The first tulip, I mean. And then you're probably also wondering, well, how about our shading tool? This is where you can also, I don't use much of the shading tool in this one, but I tend to go over some of the tulips a little bit with the shading tool when we're done. But most of this is really using pencil. So I'm moving on to the second tulip here and outlining it. And again, going a bit in the middle to darken up some areas. And then we start to add lighter shading. And, you know, thinking about tulips, how delicate they are, but they've got these creases in the petals. So the lines that you create, you don't want them to be too dark. You know, just kind of light, wispy lines. Sometimes a medium kind of light line that's a little bit darker. Getting to the last tulip here, again, doing our outlining of the shape of the tulip. Again, going in the middle of the tulip where it would be the darkest. And then creating shading on this tulip. This tulip's a little bit darker than a lot of the other ones, especially at the bottom, but also creating lots of line work, you know, using singular curved strokes that I'm doing now. And it's kind of giving it that sort of feel to the outside. What I'm attempting to do is create that feel of the outside of a, you know, the delicate flower petal. The petals is what I'm trying to say. And it would always be a little bit darker where it meets the where the flower meets the actual stem. And we're going to create the same as we get into the boot. So I'll give everybody a minute or so for the boot. Sharpen my pencil a little bit here. like to add more grass here and there. You don't have to, but I like to add some kind of wispy grass. And then we're going to get into the tongue area and start to add some lines. And then start to shade a bit dark towards the edge here. We're going to stick with the edge here, the left side of the boot, and in the middle of each of the laces. This is our darkest area of shading. And then it gets a little bit lighter using strokes, going left to right on the tongue area. But then lightening up again on the right side. So now we're going to start to add some light shading to everything, and then we'll get darker for our final dark areas. So we're going to come over here in the middle again of our laces, and we're going to shade in between our laces. So this is where you have to stop and think, where are my laces? And you can outline them as well. So outlining all the laces and then shading in the middle. And that's really going to make your shoe pop and look three-dimensional. And then we're going to stick to the light shading here on the right as we go down the boot. We're going to add some light shading on the left side of the boot, just doing little sort of little shaded areas using light strokes with our pencil. And then we're going to start up at the top again of the boot and start to create some more shaded areas. The first being right up where the boot is starting to kind of curve around the top. And then in the wrinkle areas. So again, right now, everything is sort of a medium light shade. We're shading on the left side of the boot. We're putting down the shading for that. And we're going to start to shade along the left side but coming toward the front of the boot in the area between where the sole is and the bottom section. We're shading up and down using strokes. And then we're going to outline the boot. So when you're finished with that part, you want to outline the boot, and then especially in between where the boot is connected to the bottom part of it. We want to create some dark lines, trace everything. And also trace the bumpy parts where the treads are. And we're going to make those shaded a little bit darker. And this is going to be a light or a loose shading of those treads going from left to right. Like so on the tread. We're going to get a little bit darker in between where the shoe meets the tread. Just a little bit of some dark shading there. And then finally some light shading on top of it going in the opposite direction. Again, sort of a light shaded loose area there. And for our final parts, we're going to get a little bit darker now. Going up to shade the areas of the boot that are the ones that we created sort of the bumps in. We're going to add a little bit of darker shading. And this is where, again, you're, using your pencil for mark making. Very loose, kind of scratchy shading is now going to be finishing up the darker parts of the left side of this boot. We're shading on top of the lighter shading we created around the front of the boot. And we're starting to vary the shading a bit. We make it dark. And then we add some light strokes coming from that. We're then also going to outline going towards the laces, the eyelets, and also outlining finally our laces using a thicker hand. So all the laces, you can start to do a little bit more of some outlining. And you can add just a tiny bit of some shading to maybe a few sections of each part of the um the laces. So you just want a little part that is a little shaded. And sometimes that part that's shaded is coming from the part that is coming out of the eyelet. You can also add a bit of shading to the top part of the tongue. So everything's kind of getting some now mark making on top of some of the other shading that you created. And especially the laces. Just a little bit, especially on the right side here. Let's not forget this little portion of the lace. And when you get a chance, hop back over to the lace on the left because it's got some dark shading in front of us, but then the shading gets lighter. And you can add, um, some more dark spots in the middle of where the tongue is and add some more wrinkles if you want for final touches. Do a little more outlining if you like. But that's pretty much our spring tulip in boots. And I'm going to remove my spotlight. Oops, where am I here? And I'm going to stop the recording and then see if anyone wants to show theirs.